how does unresolved trauma distort the way we hear or trust our intuition?
What trauma does is it doesn't allow certain parts of us to develop. And if you don't have a question or goal, if a part of you has been shut off, then you can't get information there. You really block yourself to the abundance that the world has. That was true of me until I had my son, which all of a sudden, from never having made a living, I made $5 million in, I think, 2 years while being at home raising my son, which was my goal. So, what you don't see, but you also don't see all the possibilities.
Right.
And trauma does that to us. Trauma kills parts of us before they're born.
Oh my goodness.
Hello.
Love, you are no spring chicken when it comes to personal growth.
I'm no spring chicken when it comes to anything, honey.
But you have so much wise wisdom. You have so much humor. And I want to begin with something that really stopped me in my tracks when I was reading the book, The Prism. You write, our ego isn't broken and it's just stuck in time. And so that hits deep because so many of us, especially high achieving, high performing women, we're walking around thinking something's wrong with us or are we too much, when actually there's probably something unresolved in us. So take us back to the moment when this framework, the Prism, first came through for you. Was it a breakdown, a wake-up call, a dark night of the soul?
Well, actually, the prism came to me, although it didn't have words because I was so young when I was a 5-year-old and living alone in an apartment at night with 3 younger children. And there was so much that was above my pay grade. And intuition, it didn't teach me. It guided me toward what would someone who knew what to do. And without telling me, it led me. The wonderful thing is that over the years, it continued to lead me. You always make a sacrifice for something. And what I made a sacrifice for this really salvation was in my ego formation, knowing who I was. I didn't even know what my favorite color was or remember to eat. I have 2 siblings and a mother and an uncle, all who've suicided. And this was given to me because I had such a defective brain that intuition could come through. After I began to put it down on paper, I knew it was there. I just couldn't find it. And I'm always doing 5 processes at once because I'm always trying to solve something in myself. I mean, as you can tell just from the first statement, I was not raised in an ideal. Well, I did not have ideal ego formation. I didn't see the right way. And my brother committed suicide before my sister 2 years later. And
After your sister 2 years later?
Before my sister, who committed suicide 2 years later. And
how old were they, though?
In their early 50s. And this really opened the wound that my mother had left when I was 14 with her suicide. And on my computer, as is the way, this putting down of guidance for myself popped up. And the very first phrase in it was what my sister-in-law had picked for my brother's memorial card, a quote from Einstein about knowing that time and space is only an illusion. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I had to continue it. I'm not a magical thinker, but the world is synchronistic. So that was guidance. And as I put it down, as I retrieved what I knew, but I'd actually only been able to use in parts, I then have the blessing of thousands of students to try it out on. Wow. And so that's what I did for the next decade.
Oh my goodness.
And it became the Prism. The idea was always the same, but the name ended up really being perfect. It started as human architecture because we have a successful blueprint.
Yeah.
But it's not accessible to us because of our early patterning.
And what do you think for specifically your family? What do you think and what do you now know with obviously all of the work and the knowledge that you now impart on thousands of people? And of course, we have this new book. Do you think this is going to help others who also probably have lost others to suicide or any mental health issues and illnesses, that we can start to, reclaim or shift our lives in a better way to handle some of what life throws us.
I think that the Prism, yes, will certainly help survivors. I wish I had had it down on in a cohesive fashion to give to my brother and my sister because, I sit at family holidays and I think, gee, if you had just waited a beat, you know, look at this, look at your beautiful children, look at your beautiful homes. They both, my sister had a law degree from Columbia. My brother had a degree from Harvard, Stanford, and the University of Virginia. I thought, wow, if you had just waited a beat, I wish I had had this to give them. And I think one of the reasons this book is so meaningful to me is it is the prism, the blueprint, the framework for how people who thrive. And it's not something that all of us have. And we tend to blame ourselves. We tend to think we're defective. Actually, what often happens if you survive bad childhoods is that your defects become your superpowers.
Right. And you said your mom also.
My mother committed suicide 2 days after my 14th birthday. Yes.
Wow. Wow. And so, obviously that had to have thrown you into kind of this dharma of supporting others because no
It
one,
wasn't her first attempt. I mean, I was alone. So we had neighboring, and this is in the book. I actually included memoir, which I've always been like not particularly wanting to include, although my next work is memoir now. But I included memoir because I wanted to say, listen, you can really have grown up in, no mud, no lotus. Well, there was real mud. And the lotuses, they took a long time and they kind of had brown leaves and, you know, uh, uh, but it's not where you start. It's where you end up. And my mother's suicide, although I would never have been able to put it in words at 14, it was not her first attempt. We lived in a neighboring apartment with no connection to the adult apartment. I was 5,
wow.
Now there was a nanny sometimes during the day, but there was nobody at night. When I think of it now, I was 5. Now, in some cultures, you're raised to do that, but not in mine.
Yeah.
I come from an affluent, dysfunctional family. And affluence and dysfunction don't live very well together because nobody believes you.
Wow. Yeah. It's 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 interesting because while I want to get into, the ego centers and now looking back and seeing maybe the patterning and probably the dysfunction of the pain that your mom was going through, the pain that probably, your uncle also was going through, and then your siblings. When you talk about the 7 ego centers in the book, is there anything that pertaining to kind of the family lineage that perhaps can help other people better understand how to support themselves too if they're actually going through or they're with a family member that is battling either mental health or depression in any way?
I think that we often get, excuse me, get caught in the story
Hmm.
and we get drawn into the trauma. And I know that with my siblings, I was guilty of that. I was always kind of in one of their problems. And it's so interesting because you don't see what you don't see. It's not what I do with clients. With clients, I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. I don't want to hear about your problem. Here's your solution. And here's the first step. Here's the can do that you can do right now. Because the solutions are big things. First steps are not. Um, so I totally ADD'd out the question.
It's okay.
Um,
No, but how does the 7 ego centers, is that kind of, does that come from your kind of lineage, the work with seeing how your mom and your siblings kind of passed through? Did that inform how
I,
the ego centers are? And do you see looking back, maybe
right.
something was amiss or something
Oh,
they could have?
everything was amiss. I
Yeah.
mean, my brother, it's so funny because they have children, so I'm so careful what I say about them. I think of it and they're part of my stories, but then I stop myself because then I realize also part of their children's stories.
Sure.
But you know, the same thing that made them brilliant also made something amiss, which is we're not neurotypical. My brother learned, finished college physics and learned to read both at the age of 9.
Wow.
And, my sister graduated from Columbia on the first try while having a nervous breakdown and staying in not a private room in Payne Whitney Psychiatric Center. So, and I luckily I didn't have the psychiatric genes because a lot of our ego is initially our genetics, and then hopefully our parents compensate. That didn't happen in our development. But I think that the desire to do a good job helping take people out of pain, which really is not just an internal process, it's getting people what they want.
Right.
Enough money, a love, a wonderful home, a family, a world that sees the them they want to be. That drive is definitely being an oldest child, knowing that, at 5, I didn't say to myself, I'm 5, I made this bottle too hot. I said, I just burnt my baby sister with that hot milk. I just stuck her with that ducky pin,
Yeah.
Because we didn't have Velcro back then. We had
Of
ducky
course.
pins.
I mean, I'm listening to this and I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So I'm just imagining like how it had to have been. It's just so profound that had to have been for you to take care of your siblings. But then on the other side, I see this post-traumatic growth where, of course, you're doing the work that you're doing right now. And I
And
see,
the growth was also in the trauma because
yeah,
actually I thought you couldn't give me a doll. I thought they were dead babies. I adored dressing my baby sister up and taking her out with the old ladies in her pram to the flagpole and showing off what a beautiful baby I had. And in those days, you didn't call children's services. You just pretended nothing was happening. But our a lot of this was the blessing of intuition. So just what you needed to know coming through.
right.
A lot of this is also, leaning on a lot of old practices, the chakras,
Mhm.
uh, ego and character development, all of those. It's interesting when something works, you can always find, oh, wait, other people had systems to show why this worked. The chakras show why it works.
Sure.
Developmental psychology shows why it works.
And now in the book, you have organized it to have, to talk about the 7 ego centers, as well as, really helping others develop their intuition. And I want to talk about intuition now because if our ego is the prism, then intuition is the light that moves through it. And you've spent decades teaching people how to trust the light and how to see the light in others, how to see the light in themselves. And I love how you strip away the fluff that intuition isn't a magical gift, it's a skill that you build over time. And so, what do people still get wrong about intuition, and how can we start tuning it in a way where it's useful in the chaos of our everyday lives?
You picked the most important word, which is useful. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm having enough trouble with this life. I don't need to look at 20 past lives. I need to deal with what's in front of me. Intuition is always functioning. It can help you find the next disastrous relationship. It can be run by your subconscious just as easily as it can help you find what your conscious goals are. So really training it and making it, insisting that all your information, including intuitive, the out of the blue information, is practical, verifying it, because magicalizing and beliefs are wonderful, but they're not tools. If you're going to jump out of a burning building, you want to know that trampoline has been stress tested. You don't want to believe you can fly. That is dangerous. So really documenting, verifying, and we do that through the book. The way that the book is organized is something, you need something in your life. Let's say you were passed over for promotion again. That's your 4th ego center. So there are tiny changes, because big changes make messes. Tiny changes make progress. There's a tiny change that you can try it on for a few days, and notice if your external world, which is just a reflection of that light in you and refracted by that prism that is your ego, notice if all of a sudden your world changes? Because it's often, research shows we find what we're looking for. It's often just a tiny little moving your head that much, and there's a whole world that is ready to meet you that you didn't know existed. But that's really hard to do. And it's hard for me to do. I always say self-help authors, and I know that this is true of your work as well. You've been to hell and back. And in hell, you found the tools to fight the devil.
Yeah.
And so did I. And it is the blessing that, because what's worse than having nothing to offer? So many of my friends, I'm 66, so many of my friends are retiring and they're eating, shopping, and traveling. For me, I can't think of a worse life. Having nothing to give, or at least having a lot to give and not giving it,
Right.
and not having a community to give it to. I would feel so, so terribly alone. But we can. The great thing is your prism. So what it is you are, how you are physically, and what it is you create is locked and loaded by age 7. From conception to age 7, locked and loaded. Here's the good news. You can change it. And I always say, pretend everything's your fault. Because if it's your fault, you will find, however small that little power is, you will find that power to change it.
And you will change it.
And you will change it.
And it sounds like, just being able to take accountability. Take accountability instead of blaming outside of the prism. Because if you're taking that accountability, then you have that inherent power to change. And you've helped CEOs make million-dollar decisions. You've helped Hollywood stars and celebrities. I've been to your home. I've seen all the photos. And literally you're teaching them, intuition, but you're also helping them fine-tune their gifts. And working with all these brilliant people, growing up in a brilliant family, what's the biggest difference between how, folks like that use their intuition and how the everyday person can benefit from their intuition even more?
That's such an interesting question. I think one of the things that happens with any kind of celebrity, whether you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company or you're a movie star, is that you're dealing with so much intrusion all the time that you actually need to hire someone like me to see the future for you, or notice threats or opportunities, or, troubleshoot a project, because it's overwhelming. We actually, as civilians, as I call us, even though life is still overwhelming, because life is always full, no matter what, it is less publicly overwhelming. There's a little more of a container. And, one of the things that I think is a starting point for everyone is finding your container. Like, next time you come to New York, you should stay with me. I'm a good container.
Thank you.
I
will. I'll take you up on it.
But really, I think that I used to travel with a lot of my friends who are big stars. And I would always go out a different door with my son. Like if we were at Barney's, which I don't know if it exists anymore. I don't know what exists anymore, but I'd go out a different door because their children were recognizable, were targets, were, subject to nasty comments in whatever rag was looking. Mine wasn't. And I did not want that connection. So there are a lot of different kinds of, there's a heightened threat,
Yeah.
I think, with celebrity. And it's funny, I have a family member, I'm not allowed to say who, I'm sure you can all guess, who wants to do well in life, wants to invent fabulous things, but does not want to be recognizable because of this person's history.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I can see how
they know the cost.
Of course. Now, I want to get into, you've said that trauma and unhealed wounds can block our intuition. How does unresolved trauma distort the way we hear or trust our intuition? And what's one way that we can start clearing that interference?
Well, what trauma does is it doesn't allow certain parts of us to develop. And if you don't have a question or goal, if a part of you has been shut off, then you can't get information there. So, for example, the second ego center, which is all about nourishment and pleasure and abundance. But nourishment also has that threat of poison. If you've been invaded, whether, you know, improperly touched in your early life, or your nourishment was tangled with a depressed or violent person. But if that happens, then you really block yourself to the abundance that the world has. You tend to be a nourisher, but not let the reward for that in. And it was really that was true of me until I had my son, which was really interesting. So using the creativity of that ego center opened me up. And all of a sudden, from never having made a living, I made $5 million in, I think, 2 years.
Wow.
While being at home raising my son, which was my goal. And I'd love to talk about why goals are important.
Yeah.
So, what you don't see, but you also don't see all the possibilities.
Right.
And trauma does that to us. Trauma kills parts of us before they're born. And so it's so important. And that's what the Prism does. It says, don't go back. But here's what might be absent in your life. And if it is, here's what the ideal development looked like. You might want to try some of that out on yourself or find it in somebody else. So, both of us were adultified.
We were
very
adultified
young,
very, very young.
And I've really learned a big step for me, and it changed my life, was when we travel, allowing my wonderful husband to carry my passport.
He's amazing.
He teared up the first time I gave him my passport.
Oh.
I'm actually tearing up thinking about it because I didn't have parents who could carry my passport.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. And, like going back to your book, The Prism, I think it's so valuable in a culture and society now where like this next generation, even our generation, is growing up with AI, is growing up with all of their excuses to kind of point fingers elsewhere. But I feel like your book is really giving us the tools to really claim and reclaim, hey, we actually have all the power. And what I'm hearing, what you've said about trauma is, the trauma blocks it because it leaves us in that victim mode where we aren't really even seeing our power. And so for somebody listening or watching this on YouTube who feels cut off from their gut instincts, what's one practice that you love, maybe that you do from the Prism that they can try to
Can I do 3 quickly?
Yeah.
2 are quick. 1, you know what? Your trauma keeps you in the past. Looking for it keeps you in the past. Believe me, go for something you want. Your trauma is going to meet you and you'll find tools to solve it. So find the can do. What do you want to do right now? Do it. And then if an obstacle comes up, the answer is not inside of you. The answer is in self-help, someone who does it well, being in a community and bumping up against someone and allowing yourself to change because of it. So find the can do. That's 1. Yeah. Number 2 is to really, it's not even about blame. It's that, you give your power away when you're not the cause. It doesn't mean it's your fault, but don't give your power away. Don't give it away to a doctor. Don't give it away to clergy. Don't give it away to anyone. The upside of AI is when kids learn how to use it, they can get some real information as long as they check their sources. Take the power back for you and know that a miracle takes a moment. So if you are not getting your miracle, don't hold your breath and wait for it. Don't go to a psychic and have them predict it. Find someone who does that miracle you want well, and learn, practice, try something out, get a self-help book, do something different, and you will find that you are your own magic wand. And the other thing, it feels magical, but it's actually an amazing process. Take one hand, this is you right now,
Okay.
and be mindful. So just take a moment, you right now, taste, feel, smell, see, hear where you are right now, and let this hand represent you right now. Take the other hand and just come up, and this is a process, you can use it for everything, so don't obsess, you anxiety types, about not choosing the right thing. What is your goal? Let this hand represent your goal. and take a moment to get to know that hand. Don't imagine. You can only imagine what you've been exposed to. Intuition gives you new information. Let this hand be your goal. The space between you now and the goal, that space is the space you're going to heal. So in a moment, we're going to move what we can move in others. We're going to change the dynamic of situations. We're going to move this, even the systems and cells of our body. We're going to take this point in time and this point in time and make them one. And so as you bring your hands together at your own pace, and once again, you don't need to concentrate on it because you do things from a pattern. This is something new. To have something new, you need to be something new. But what happens as you bring your hands together is you are cueing your subconscious to bring up anything from your past that needs to be resolved. You're cueing your telepathy, your non-local communication, to have different kinds of conversations, more productive ones with people and situations around you. You're cueing the cells of your body to perhaps work a little differently. And you are truly bridging the space between what is and what you intend. And if you do this, and one of the things that and you do it at your own rate, and sometimes you'll feel like bringing your hands back and doing it again, but it's a really interesting healing and an interesting subconscious cueing psychological process. As you bring your hands together, when they come together, you can just assume it's done. And you don't have to believe. That forcing belief is it's always a losing proposition. But then you need to take your hand, take the hand of the person who got you there. I like to kiss mine. Take the hand of the person who got you there. And then what I do while I'm holding my hand is I take a breath. I let my eyes roll up so I'm in an alpha state, which is subjectable, subjectable. And I give myself the suggestion, I allow myself to experience that every time I put my hands together throughout the night and day, I repeat this process. That means at a theater, I am repeating that process so many times. And I do that many times throughout the day and I allow this future to shift my perception, because the reality is you create from what you know, and that's not what you want if your life doesn't feel perfect. You want to create from what you intend. And that you don't know yet.
That's perfect. I think it's so brilliant because when we're using our hands as this metaphor, and I feel like it's such a beautiful somatic practice to then even come back into our body. So
the interesting thing is, so my husband has a little physical thing that happens, pops up every once in a while, and I do his body and his body healthy. And when I'm doing it, I mean, if my phone were on, he might call right now. He'd say, "You're working on me, aren't you?" Because you can actually feel it. And one of the things I want to encourage people to do is notice proofs in your environment. Life is causal. We just don't always know the cause. Yeah. So we magicalize. If what you did was for a relationship, notice that the last 3 weeks, no one has stopped you on the street, and that you walk out of the door today and 3 nice people try to connect with you who are, not too bad. Notice what you are able to create. Everybody loves the word manifest. Notice what happens outside of you, because subjective proofs are just that. They're subjective. You can make that stuff up.
Sure.
Objective proofs, however, are wonderful. And what they do is they tell your subconscious, this is useful. I will utilize it.
And what I'm hearing is that you're almost teaching us to really pay attention to the small signs in our day to day, especially if you have that intention on that thing or that goal that you want. Which I want to segue into goals for a second, because you talk about goals in the book, and how can activating our intuition help us with aligning ourselves with the goals that we are trying to achieve in our lives?
Well, actually, goals ignite your intuition.
Ooh,
because
let's talk about that.
You're getting intuition all the time. It's just in the mess of the rest of you. It's like when I try to find a pair of shoes in my shoe closet where I have 200 pair of shoes, but none of them are together. It's too messy. So goals organize all of your experiences and direct them toward creating. The problem is we are rigid often with our goals.
Yeah.
Whereas you need to let the world teach you. I love how people, find a penny heads up and say, oh, this is a sign everything's going right. And I'm like, the fact that you just lost your home, that you're ill and your lover just left you are not a sign that things aren't going right. Your entire life is a sign. A broken mirror, that's not a sign of bad luck. What? Your wonderful kids, your wonderful job, your wonderful health, that's not a sign. So don't pick your signs. Everything in your life is a sign. Everything in your life is a teacher, and work with it. One of the things that intuition does allow us to do is like when you're having a fight, it allows you through mediumship to take a moment to be someone else so that you can understand their point of view, but only do it for a moment because all of these skills have a downside. And the downside is you start arguing their position. Same thing with telepathy. Notice the conversations you're having. What's interesting, how you see telepathy works, other than the extensive scientific research about it, is that if you're obsessing about someone not getting in touch, like you're thinking about them all the time and you're talking to them in your head, and you stop, and there's a way to stop, which is you find someone who you should be talking to, and every time you have that conversation, you reroute, and you probably have to do it hundreds of times a day.
Mm.
What you'll notice is that person will call you, reach out, write to you, get a friend to get in touch with you because you were talking to them. They were hearing you. Why should they get in touch? So mastering what I call these non-local skills
Okay.
is such an incredibly significant step in creating what you want because energy is infinite. Attention, however, is not.
So this is fascinating. So, and you go through, take us through kind of how the book is outlined so that we can really learn how to use a lot of these in
Thank
our
you so much for
practical.
asking that because I really hope that people will be flexible with this book. The beginning of the book gives you some concepts to try on that already will change how you perceive your life and open up opportunities. But what I love, I always write a book. I mean, my last book, since my last three, I've written for people who are in an emergency, are in a crisis. So how you can also use this book is just notice when you're experiencing a difficulty, where does your attention go?
Yeah.
And then go to that ego center, that prism that takes all the energy and creates your reality. Go to that and make one tiny change because then you change your life, and the changing of your life then changes you. There are two ways to do it. You can change you, and we all know from our 400 years of therapy that that's a very long process. Or you can simply do something different, especially something that's not dangerous, but that you'd almost ridicule. Oh my God, really? They want me to try that? That's the one you should do. And if you do that consistently, even for one day, what you encounter will be different and will truly and profoundly change you. So I hope people will use it also in that way where they don't have to go through it. I every once in a while, when I need a refresh, even when everything's going right, which is an odd moment because if you're me, you're waiting for the other, shoe to drop. I like to do it as a 7-day cycle. So I
Okay.
like to do every part of my prism.
Got it.
But that's not what I do on a daily basis because on a daily basis, I need to deal with a problem or there's this incredible opportunity that I need to make use of. And by the way, the great thing about your prism, your ego, is that when you change one tiny thing, it changes everything. I'd love to tell a story if I
Oh
can.
my gosh. Yes, go for it.
So there was this really big national talk show with this really incredible person. I'm not allowed to say who it was. And my friend in LA literally booked my ticket before he called me up and said, you're on this talk show tomorrow and I got you a business class ticket. And my first response is, I can't do it. It's tomorrow. That's too fast. And he said, your response actually should be, thank you. Like, wow. Like, and it was so wonderful having that come up and like break the glass, with a little hammer for the fire alarm to go, "Rah." Not a great way to live life. Where else are you doing that? So I did a reset and I went out, and the producer gave me all my sound bites for Good Morning America, which I'm doing tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
And all, really, like, everyone was so nice, and my really dear friends showed up and blah blah blah. It was 24-hour turnaround to LA. The host could not have been more talented, nicer, and more of an example of how to present your energy
Yeah.
to a group. And then I went home, and there were opportunities that presented themselves, one in the middle of the night. And instead of doing what I usually do, which I have to wake up the next day, or I'm going to eat this quickly because I really need to I thought, let me enjoy this amazing beneficence. And what happened was, a physical issue that I was having at the ego center of value, your
Your
heart,
heart, yes.
resolved, because I was having really bad palpitations for months, completely resolved. So a physical issue resolved, and a big issue around value in a different part of my life also resolved,
Wow.
because this catalyst had come in. Someone had smacked me around a little and said, "Excuse," and I had allowed that to be a teacher.
It's amazing. I think that, yeah, because it's like a tiny shift. You could have said no, and you could have been like,
I
ah,
wouldn't have said no, but I could have gone with it with, he would have killed me if I said no, but I could have gone with it still, like, oh my God,
but
this
it's a brilliant
burden.
reframe.
It was,
It's a brilliant reframe. And that's what I feel like your book, Laura, like I feel like it's going to help the masses in so many ways. And I know our time's cut short, but we do have our spill the chai round. And in our spill the chai round, it's just a rapid fire
oh, I love that.
round. Now, what's one thing your past self would never believe about your life today?
All of it. That I have a wonderful child, an incredible man, all the money I need, all the shoes I want, 3 wonderful homes, great friends, that at 66 my life isn't over and I'm not a complete hag. Um, all of it. I can't even, I was the child nobody wanted. My father knocked my mother up to make sure she couldn't leave. I mean, I was a use item. I can't even believe my life, and I can't even believe that I still walk into walls.
What are you braving currently?
I am braving the idea of autonomy, even though in so many ways I have been alone in significant ways. I really haven't been alone.
Yeah.
Um, I've always been surrounded by friends, by dead people, by all kinds of things that my abilities allow me to perceive. I'm actually being a prism, an eye, just an eye. And it's really scary, and I'm really not good at it. So even though I have a wonderful spouse and everything, I'm really embracing my autonomy and not liking it, but knowing it's time.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Laura, last question. What word describes this season of life?
Peace.
Thank you for your support, your joy always, your magnetism, and everyone needs to get the book, Prism, The Prism, 7 Steps to Heal Your Past and Transform Your Future. I think this is going to be a game changer, and I think everyone should get it. Thank you for just your insight for so many years. And I feel like you're the gift that keeps on giving.
And you are the next generation of same.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Where can everyone follow you? Because I know you do your lives.
I do in the morning before I brush my teeth, but not before I put on lipstick. On Laura Day Intuit, I have people exchange readings, exchange healings. We do one part of the prism for weeks, but we do it together because together is powerful. lauraday.com. And all of my books are made as workshops.
Oh,
So
incredible.
I really want to hear how you're doing. When it says contact Laura on my website, I'm the only one who reads it.
And you do contact back.
I
So
do,
you do.
always.
Thank you so much. Wow. What a soul shifting conversation. If you've ever been one to really overthink or perhaps get into your head or maybe think, I don't know if I even have that intuitive muscle, Laura Day had just given us all of the tools to help with our 7 ego centers and All you have to do is just like the one shift that can create ripple effects and fully reframe everything else in your life. And like she said, we are a prism. So it's everything that we are thinking, our reality, it's projected into that prism. So if you're not liking something in your life, change that thing. And I guess it'll come back to you tenfold and the ripple effects will continue. You definitely want to follow her, Laura Day, on Instagram. I'm going to link that in the show notes. You can go to lauraday.com. You can grab her book, The Prism. And if this episode inspired you in any way, caused a shift, caused a ripple effect, go ahead and share this with a friend, a family member, somebody that needs to be a little bit more brave. I will see you next time. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave. You know I've got so much more in store for you. So if you are really ready to dive in and keep owning your emotions like the boss that you are, click right here. Go ahead, don't be shy. I'll see you in the next one. Keep shining.